September 6, 1976. It is 6:45 a.m. Soviet flight instructor Viktor Belenko takes off from Sokolovka airfield for a training exercise. By 9:15 a.m., Japanese radio announces that a MiG-25, piloted by a Soviet pilot, has landed at Hakodate Airport on Hokkaido Island. The aircraft touched down on the local airfield, but the runway proved too short. The machine hurtled beyond its end, plowing through several dozen meters of earth before coming to a halt at the far end of the airfield. The pilot emerged from the cockpit, drew his service pistol, and fired 2 warning shots into the air, deterring drivers on the highway running alongside the airfield. Minutes passed before airport officials arrived at the scene. The 29-year-old Lieutenant Viktor Belenko declared his intention to surrender. It wasn't the first defection by plane from the Soviet Union, but it was one of the most damaging. At that time, the MiG-25 was top secret. The West first learned of the MiG-25's existence around 1970. Reconnaissance satellites observing Soviet military airfields detected a new type of aircraft resembling a giant fighter. Information was limited to blurry satellite images and blips on Israeli radar. It seemed the plane would remain a mysterious threat unless a Soviet pilot defected with the war machine. On the surface, Viktor Belenko appeared to be an exemplary Soviet citizen. However, he had become disillusioned with Soviet life. His personal life was also in turmoil. He had a wife and child, but the marriage was on the rocks. Studies of Belenko's personality, his behavior in service and at home, revealed repeated conflicts with his superiors. While serving at the Stavropol Aviation School, he expressed a strong desire to leave his instructor position and sought a transfer to a combat regiment. However, these attempts were unsuccessful, as the command typically did not release flight instructors from the school to the troops. As a result, he became dissatisfied. In 1975, he submitted a report to the head of the school, requesting to be dismissed from the Soviet Army. He stated he no longer wished to serve with commanders who constantly abused alcohol. Ultimately, Belenko realized that the new combat aircraft he was training on could be his ticket to freedom. The MiG-25 was a fast, high-altitude aircraft, but its fuel-guzzling engines limited its range. Reaching the nearest U.S. airbase was impossible. On September 6th, Belenko and his partner took off for a training exercise. Belenko had already devised a rough escape route. Exploiting the lax practices, Belenko filled the plane's tanks to capacity, allowing him to fly longer without refueling. During the flight, Belenko separated from his partner, descended, and headed towards the Japanese coast. He flew at an extremely low altitude over the sea, approximately 30 meters, to avoid detection by Soviet and Japanese radar. Once the aircraft had penetrated Japanese airspace, Belenko climbed to an altitude of 6,000 meters. Imagine a defector, a top-secret fighter jet, and a world on the brink. In 1976, a Soviet pilot named Viktor Belenko executed a daring escape that sent shockwaves through the Cold War. Disoriented and lost, Japanese air traffic controllers struggled to make contact as Belenko's MiG-25 Foxbat screamed through the skies. His radio was deliberately off frequency. Japanese fighters scrambled, but Belenko vanished, diving through a thick layer of cloud. Flying on instinct and memory, guided by maps studied in secret, Belenko initially aimed for Chidose Air Base. But dwindling fuel forced a change of plans. He landed at Hakodate Airport, delivering a technological treasure trove into the hands of the West. The Japanese were stunned. A defector and a cutting-edge war machine had landed on their doorstep. Intelligence agencies swarmed the airport. The CIA couldn't believe their luck. The MiG-25 was meticulously dismantled and analyzed for weeks, revealing its innermost secrets. Piece by piece, the prized aircraft was loaded onto a ship and returned to the Soviets. Japan sent Moscow a bill for $40,000 to cover the transport and damage to the airfield. The bill went unpaid. Belenko never returned to the USSR. He was granted asylum in the United States. President Jimmy Carter himself approved his American citizenship. Belenko, a former flight instructor, proposed broadcasting messages to young Soviet pilots, revealing the coordinates of nearby Japanese airfields, techniques for evading Soviet radar, and offering encouragement to potential defectors. But the U.S. government, wary of a mass exodus, rejected the idea. The cost to the Soviet Union was estimated at 2 billion rubles. The Soviets were forced to urgently replace the Identify Friend or Foe system across the country. A failsafe was added to Soviet fighter jets, a button to override targeting restrictions, forever nicknamed Belenko's button. Belenko later worked as an aerospace engineer and consultant for the U.S. military. He died in 2006. His defection remains one of the most audacious and impactful events of the Cold War.